Okay, this is the midday recap on Monday, November the 9th. Forgive me for that ambient noise. There's a lot of construction outside. Let's go ahead and start with oil as we are looking at something very interesting here developing. They are battling to hold the Globex. Initial balance low down here at 43.75. That is going to probably be the breakdown zone since we've got lower highs on the horizon with negative drift and the fast SMI and slow SMI are generally negative in a trending space. However, so long as we hold the initial balance, we should recapture the Globex and trade in a jagged, choppy square or rectangle between 43.88 and 44.11. The breach of those regions carries us into the daily pivot at 44.33-ish. Could stop right here at the 44.31 area because of this congestion. Downside 43.44 as the target zone. Over here, we do have divergent momentum pointing to the space that says the chart is building some kind of move into upper resistance and potentially going to build new support. That being said, this looks a lot like the formation that we had on Friday. And so I have to use a 5-minute chart to show you that, simply because I want you to realize that momentum indicators that push upward like this resolve upward, but not before a potential washout comes into the fray, right? And notice, if you were saying, hey, listen, if it gets up over this level 44.51, 44.55, I'm going to take it long, you'd be right for a couple of pennies or whatever, momentum pointing that that's an upside space, but it's only into the resistance zone. And if you're bounded by the moving averages, you are going to end up only going into the resistance zone before a collapse in the space. So today, forming up to be just like it. So be careful there in terms of saying, hey, listen, I know this looks like it's bouncing. It could very well be bouncing. I believe that the chart is trying to find some kind of bottom. But we won't know. And so what we're doing is just sitting here in this space, working through the edges. So what's the plan? Anticipate that based on this sort of undulating momentum event, that sharp pullback's going to get bought and that resistance areas ought to be sold. Trade in the direction of the prevailing trend until the chart fails to give you lower lows. Now, if you look at the 5-minute and you look at the great big wave, you actually are looking at a space where you could easily go, well, wait a second, am I not making a higher low here right now? Yes, absolutely. If you took it short at the 43.90 and it comes in here and it doesn't break down below that 43.80, 43.84 area, you know it's likely to bounce. So you've got to make a decision about getting out and then cycling back in. And of course, I'm talking about very tight intraday cycles overall. In the end, it is my thought that steep pullbacks will continue to get bought, but right now they are getting bought into lower highs. And so you've got to think about that. What that tells us is the prevailing trend says that really big bounces in resistance and into resistance ought to provide the shorting areas on the day. Let's take a look at the ES. Slowly. Yes, this recording is going to make it. Okay. Um, Taking a look at the ES here, I talked about this morning 2086 being a big deal. It lost the level. Here's the beauty, right? Building selling action over the prior days. Hence my commentary about the level needing to hold. Big increasing levels of selling as the chart makes lower highs. Clearly an area that says, wait a second, if we lose that, we've got movement below. Absolutely coming into the next congestion event, 2064 ought to hold today. You might be saying, good grief, look at that momentum. Yes, it could easily lose that level, but it should recapture it. The next level below, 2061, 2060, 75. All right, but that ought to be the range. Look, really, what do? We trade support to resistance, resistance to support. That's really what it is that we're looking at here. And so that ought to be the case. So if you say to yourself, well, over here, looks like I had a bunch of buyers start battling in this region. If we measure that momentum space, we can see, if we look at the 4-hour, we can see definitively that we've got negative drift associated with that. So the bounce ought to be into resistance, folks. Very steep moving averages. So watch your bounces. If you're saying, hey, listen, I'm going to try to pick the bottom here off of these regions, your first bounces are going to be into resistance. So you watch them. And if you cannot get over that first line in the sand that says, here's where the sellers are, they're going to force you into a deeper support level. So just watch for that, as many of us are addicted to bottom picking. Sometimes it works out great. If you understand what it is that you need to be doing, then that's great. But in the end, slope is going to be king, as it always is, and a shift in momentum involves a breach and a retest of where it is that we're at. Taking a look at the TF, this one, much stronger pre-market, had these big newer levels in terms of a 20-day high. As we're taking a look at it here, it's come down into a congestion zone. It is an S-curve test here essentially, but it's tested it several times and sort of holding the area. So that's really a jagged patch. You know, the key event here is going to be, well, where is it that these buyers are going to exercise control? Where are they going to exercise measures of control? And they are going to exercise those levels of control at, let's see if this behaves. No, it won't. At big regions of support. And so the big region of support here is now somewhere around this patch, right? And I'm not going to say big region of support. Really, it's where the chart is sitting at for noisy congestion, to be honest. And that's a very noisy congestion event right around, no, not up there, right around, it's snapping to grid, so forgive me. Right around the 1179.20 area. Now we see it bouncing significantly off of that. We know that it can move a little further down, but we are getting fairly close to a support zone here. Resistance going to be up here in this patch, this 1184 to 1186 area, but we should start slowing down this very strong, steep move to the south. It should start to slow up a little bit. Listen, could we continue to move down? Absolutely. The bounce here at relative support is going to tell us whether that's going to happen. Is it going to bounce into a little area of resistance at the 183, or is it going to come in a little bit steeper? How do we assess what that is? Got to look at those 5-minute charts. Watch the divergence in momentum. Look for how much buying volume is getting assessed. Guess what? Not a lot of buying volume at all. Still looking like we bounce into resistance. There's the initial balance high. Also the daily support level on the pivot. So that seems like clear resistance. This area also seems like a very strong patch of resistance. Here's how you know that you're changing direction. You're going to bounce, you're going to pull back, and you're going to make a higher low. Simple as that. If you are looking to pick a bottom and hang on to it, you need to see a change in the shift of the form of the market. And right now, all of it says, hey, listen, great place to sell any particular bounce that I have. All right, taking a look at the NQ, this one's moved quite rapidly in spaces. It's been, Bob mentioned it was unrelenting, and I think that really that's a fairly good word for this one. Take a look at the volume. I find to be very interesting in this chart. This one tells me, I could easily be coming into my support regions. Look at how important, we're going to look at the 1-hour chart here. Look at how important this level is. Right here, 46.25. We came in just shy of it. Trying to bounce. Where's congestion? Well, congestion looks like maybe 46.32, right? And we're battling around there right now. Slopes still very steep. We could lose this level. Very clearly, we could lose the level. But we are coming into a space where buyers are going to start saying, I wonder if this is where I can start to plant my feet. What do you need to look for if you're trying to if you're trying to pick a bottom, you want to watch for the bounce up, the retest, let the retest hold from a space of momentum, or brings you into a higher low. Then you've got a shot into the first lines of resistance before the chart makes any other decisions. What do I think? We bounce into congestion. In general, we've got a bit of negative momentum. What's the chart ultimately doing? And I can say this about the NQ, the ES, the TF. We're a little bit ranged, right? We're in a little bit of a range. A lot of people very, very, very bullish on this market. I am not one of them. Doesn't make me go short, right? It's a fool's errand to go short when you've got upward sloping moving averages on almost every single time frame that you see that is longer. You just don't do that. You simply move in the direction of the motion until you get yourself topping formations. Look at them here, right? Several days ago, remember early last week, I said, hey, listen, TF, that was the only one that told us it was happening. Listen, this tells us we're going to have, volume tells us we're going to have a little bit of a pullback. Could be a little steeper. As time progresses, we see that it is, but it should still be bought. Buyers, a lot of them still in the market. They're very, very enthusiastic about motion. Here's the thing. October, very outsized performance overall. Everything on Earth reverts to the mean. Everything. And so it's just the nature of how things are. And so if we had a massive expansion, we need to think about a minor contraction at the very least for the charts coming into the space. And so we're seeing that a little bit in October. What are we looking for here? support regions somewhere around this congestion zone, 45.96, and then the chart may move a little bit sideways, could even move up just a little bit more. I do believe that we're in line for a steeper retracement, but I really don't trade what I believe, I trade what I see. And so if the two happen to be together, then I can make really big trades. Otherwise, I just make smaller trades because I'm always trading what I see and not what I believe. Because, well, in essence, I believe that I should be trading what it is I'm seeing and not some general belief system about what it is that charts should or should not be doing. So, that being the case, what do we see here? If we lose this level, it's going to be a blow off bottom, meaning any sharp movements down here are going to be a buy zone. Doesn't mean it's going to be a reversal zone. It just means it's going to deliver a wick to us like this that will punch us up into regions of resistance. What's the moral of the story? If you take the break down there, be prepared to be met by buyers fairly quickly, right? Or at least into that first level. All right, super fast like, and let's expand just this so that we can take a look at the rest of them very, very quickly here. And them, of course, you know what I'm talking about, our regular formations that we trade. You know, I believe that Apple is in a retracement space. Let's take a look at the hourly. On the morning, this morning I said, hey, you know, could be a nice bounce zone here at the 120.64, but if we're fortunate, it'll come into 119.32. What's the trade? Hey, what's the slope? That's the trade. Negative slope. Watch for the bounce into resistance and the failure. If you take the break of the lows, sure, it could do it for you, except this is a very bullish chart, and breaks of the lows will find buyers, a la, look at this candlestick right here. That's the break of the relative low of the prior day. What does it bring? Buyers. Okay, and so if you are thinking about taking a trade intraday on a very bullish chart, probably don't want to go short at the break of the low. Right? In the end, what are we looking at here? This chart should chop around here, try to hold the region. It's got fairly negative momentum. We can look at it coming into maybe the 119.50 area, and that ought to give us a little bit of action to the upside after the fact. If not, it could come into 118.80. Taking a look at Netflix. Oh, pretty. Look, just like we talked about pre-market, loss of the 112.36 area. It gives us the retest on the hourly chart. Beautiful. Or the rejection of the 113.75 area, looking long above 114.60. That's really where that holds. Where are we? Support 110. There's our number right there. Congestion zone right here. Look at the slope. It says that bounces ought to be sold, right? So what does this mean? Doesn't mean that you go take a long simply because the chart is bouncing here, but it does mean that you trim your shorting action, anticipate a bounce zone. If it bounces and fails, you've got an added opportunity to the downside there with Netflix. Where's this one going? Looks to me like it's headed here, you know, to our levels that we look at right there. All right, taking a look at Tesla. $234, still resistance zone for this chart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days at the region. Moving average squeeze on the hourly. Good solid breakdown. Remember what I say this morning. Under that 228, 229 area, we've got a shorting event. Up above 234 or 233.60, we've got that long event, and that's exactly what's transpired here. Where are we? Sitting near a support zone, but with lots of negative momentum, so the chart could lose it. What's the choice here? Well, if you took it at the loss of 229 or 228.60 or whatever that we'd been talking about here, it is time to take some profit. I mean, we are clearly sitting at regions that have buying potential, but it is no place to take a bounce. It really isn't. We've lost the weekly pivot after testing it, and so we should fade into a lower level of support. That being said, clearly buyers here, so manage your trade, right? Keep yourself green. As a day trader, that's really, I mean, I just said that right earlier in the trading room. Just, you want to stay green. That's really all there is to it. Take a look at this again. Rejection of 199 is what I had in the blog, right? The failed rejection of that area. Here we have 198.89 underneath the 10, underneath the 20, negative momentum, topping for days, right? Easy space for us to say, all right, I'm moving into support. Where is that? We had that at 94, 194.45. It is bouncing a little bit. Here's the measure of congestion to watch. If we pop up here into this 196.46 and we cannot hold the level, it will continue downward. Next stop is the gap fill. Notice it came to the top of the gap and then bounced. If it comes into this region again, it will collapse through the gap and try to fill it. And so that really is essentially what we're watching. In the grand scheme of things, there are buyers in the mix here, and this is our first loss of the 50. So guess what? We are probably going to try and retest it in the next little bit. All right, taking a look at Yahoo. $34.30. Can't remember what I had in the blog here. Let's take a look. $33.98 or the failed retest 34.74 did not give us that upward motion. $33.98 right here, so that gave us our breakdown. Look at the form. Tells us we can take that break. Rejection of the 10 underneath all those moving averages. Looks great. Here we have our first test level, 33. Beautiful. You can see that converging right there. Our levels working very, very nicely. What's the story here? Well, got to look here first. 33.60. If it comes into the Globex and rejects, we're able to add to that space. If it continues down, 32.62, fairly solid level. You know, my thought, let's just get one of these. My thought is that this area here ends up being a very interesting target zone. And so we'll be watching that, the 32.90 area. So far, really beautiful, clean price action for our opening events. Gosh, it's great. Superb, actually. What do we have here for Facebook? Lower high. What did that come into? 108. I had our breakdown at the 106.70 rejection, and it's because it's got so much noise here. This actually is in a box. Now notice, if you look here at the high, and then you've got a lower high, another lower high, rejection of our predefined levels, we know what they're sitting up there as. If we reject these zones in that tight moving average squeeze, we know we've got a shot early, right? A lot of times the blog will give us our clear breakaway levels into clean support, which we've got right here, bounced off right off of the prior day's low, which is always the first target on the breakdown event. Sitting in this space, if it comes in and rejects the region here at 107.20, It's going to give us more downside. Momentum is fairly negative, but it's also not without a lot of, it doesn't have a lot of power. And so that's really what we're looking at. We have an absence of power in the motion overall. This is a very strong upward trending chart. Pullbacks ought to be bought, but the chart is a little bit extended and should come into the support zone. In the grand scheme, it's got room to run. So the pullbacks ought to find buyers. The question is, how steep is the pullback going to be? All right, and that is the recap for us.